training. And it's a small town with a little community church and then a train station and a general store and a couple of other things. But this boy remembers vividly as a child, one Sunday morning, just church, business as usual. He's sitting in the back. His dad was an elder of the church and was listening to the pastor preach. And the windows were open. Of course, they didn't have air conditioner back then, but the windows were open. The breeze was coming in, and he began to smell this horrible smell. And he didn't know what it was. It was a horrible, horrible smell. And as the smell kind of went through the church, I guess it was a bit of a wrestling in the church. Like, what is that? What is this? And then immediately preceding this kind of smell was this noise. And this noise is that of people in desperation crying out for help. And what had happened is there had been a new concentration camp that had been built. And this train track that went right through this little village and stopped at this little train station to get water or whatever those trains did, had stopped there. And when it did, it was filled with Jewish people, crammed in like sardines in this boxcar. And this boxcar sat there just for a moment or two, as whatever they had to do in that time to get the train ready to move on and head towards that concentration camp. It had stopped there for a second, and this church was interrupted. This service was interrupted, not just by a horrendous smell, the smell of death, really, but the smell of people crying out for help, desperate for help. And so the train moved on, church proceeded, and it ended, and it was like, okay, well, that was crazy. Well, next Sunday comes around, and the same thing happened. The church was interrupted right in the middle of the sermon, and they stopped again, and what's crazy is the pastor of that church at that time they were praying for what was going, the atrocities that was going on, and all of a sudden, it's kind of like, oh, here it is on our front door. Well, the third Sunday comes around, and the elders had gotten together, and they decided that they were going to be ready this time, because evidently this was a routine stop on the way to this new concentration camp. So they were like, man, we're going to be ready as a church. We're going to be ready. And so church gets going again, but they had rearranged the service a bit so that there was music towards the back of the service instead of preaching. And they had closed all the windows. And as the train approached, the minister of music began to sing, and they began to sing louder. And he was telling his congregation to sing louder, sing louder, sing louder, in order to drown out the noise and to drown out the people that were outside. And when we heard that story, we were just like, oh my gosh, is that us? Is that the church today? I hope not. And as soon as we heard that, we were like, man, we've got to name this next tour that, and we've got to tell people this story, because it was so impactful to us. And it's just like, man, what do we do with this information that we've just heard, Because I feel like we in America, specifically, are really good at singing songs, I feel like we're really good at building buildings. We're really good at loving each other most of the time, a lot of the time. But what do we look like to the hurting people who are desperate? Not just desperate for food and drink and shelter, but desperate for the gospel of Jesus. And so we wanted to kind of invite you guys in on this journey with us in a way where we take I guess the thought of turning down the music, and we kind of put that into action with turning up not just awareness but action. And in front of you there's little packets, and if you could just pull those out right now, like little packets of World Vision packets.